I want you to imagine this for a second. A man who has spent decades sitting behind a judge's desk, staring straight into the dreams of other people, breaking them with a single sentence or launching them into superstardom with a nod, suddenly looks into a camera and admits something about his own son that even he says he wasn't ready to say out loud. Not on TV, not in interviews, not even to himself. And when this confession surfaced, it didn't just surprise fans. It rattled them. Because it wasn't about music. It wasn't about fame. It was about fear, about regret, and about a father realizing, a little too late, that the toughest judge in the room might actually be him. Now before you roll your eyes and think, here we go again, another dramatic headline trying to squeeze emotions out of us, I need to stop you right here. Because I've been reading through your comments on the last few videos, and I see some of you are calling out the drama. Honestly, I get it. In a world full of scripted TV moments and AI-generated stories, it's hard to know what's real anymore. I felt the exact same way when I first saw this headline pop up on my screen late at night. I almost scrolled past it. But something about it didn't feel like the usual clickbait. So I did what I always do when my gut says, wait. I went deeper. I watched the full interviews. I read the long-form quotes that most outlets trimmed down. I listened to the pauses in his voice, the moments where he stopped talking, not for effect, but because he genuinely didn't know how to finish the sentence. And what I found, honestly, it hit harder than I expected. This story is about Simon Cowell *, yes. The sharp-tongued music mogul. The man who built empires like The X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. The guy millions of Americans know as brutally honest, almost untouchable. But this story isn't about Simon the judge. It's about Simon the father. And more specifically, it's about his 11-year-old son, Eric Cowell *, and a confession that has parents everywhere feeling deeply uncomfortable, emotional, and divided. The hook here isn't just that Simon admitted something shocking. It's what that admission reveals about power, pressure, and the quiet damage fame can do inside a family when the cameras turn off. Simon Cowell's rise is the kind of story we think we already know. Dropping out of school, struggling in the music industry, failing, again and again, before finally becoming the man who could make or break a career with a sentence. For decades, his identity was built on control. Control over sound, control over talent, control over outcomes, and for a long time, that control was celebrated. People loved him for it. He was the guy who said what everyone else was too scared to say. But then something happened that no amount of money or influence could fully prepare him for. He became a father later in life. Eric wasn't just a child, he was a mirror. A living reminder that time moves forward whether you're ready or not. And Simon has admitted more than once that becoming a dad completely rewired him. What he hadn't admitted until now is how unprepared he was for what that really meant. Here's where the first layer of this story begins. In a recent conversation that most headlines reduced to a single sentence, Simon openly admitted that when Eric was born, he was terrified. Not in the new dad nerves kind of way, but in a deeper, heavier way. He confessed that he genuinely didn't know how to be emotionally present. He knew how to provide. He knew how to protect financially. But emotionally, he said he felt lost. And at the time, he brushed that fear aside because work was always there to distract him. Fans initially reacted with sympathy. You could see comments saying things like, "At least he's being honest," and "Most dads won't admit this." But then came the second layer. The part that started making people uncomfortable. Simon admitted that for years, he treated parenting almost like a project. Something to schedule, something to optimize. He talked about missing moments he can't get back. School events he didn't attend. Conversations he postponed because there was always another meeting, another show, another deal that felt urgent. And the way he said it wasn't defensive. It was heavy, like someone replaying scenes in their head and realizing the ending doesn't change. This is where the internet started to split. On TikTok, clips of Simon's interview went viral within hours. One video had text over it that read, "Money can't buy time." Another user stitched the clip and said, "This is why rich kids still feel alone." Meanwhile, on X, people were not holding back. One tweet with thousands of likes said, "So you were absent and now you're sad about it? Congrats." Another replied, At least he's owning it. That's more than most. Reddit threads exploded. Long posts analyzing whether Simon's honesty was brave or self-serving. One commenter wrote, "This feels like guilt talking, not growth." Another responded, "Growth starts with guilt. That's the whole point." And just when people thought they understood the confession, Simon dropped the third layer. And this is where the tone changed. He admitted that his biggest fear isn't losing relevance or money anymore. It's losing his son's trust. He said there was a moment, a small moment, where Eric asked him a simple question that stopped him cold. He didn't repeat the exact words publicly, but he described it as a moment where he realized his son didn't expect him to be around. Let that sink in. Not hoped, not wanted, expected. I don't know about you, but that line hit me in the chest. This wasn't a scandal. There was no crime, no lawsuit, no explosive secret in the traditional celebrity news sense. But emotionally, this was nuclear, because it forced a lot of people watching to ask themselves a question they didn't want to ask. If the people who love us the most stopped expecting us to show up, would we even notice? This is where I want to pause for a second and talk to you directly. If you're watching this and you're a parent, or you plan to be one, or you're someone who grew up feeling like an afterthought, this story probably feels personal. And if you're finding this kind of deep, honest storytelling different from the usual celebrity noise, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Not because I want numbers, but because these are the stories the algorithm doesn't always push, and I don't want you missing them when they matter most. Now, the fourth layer is the one most articles barely touched, but fans definitely noticed. Simon admitted that he sees himself in Eric in ways that scare him. He talked about recognizing the same intensity, the same stubbornness, the same need for validation. And he said something that made a lot of people pause. He said he doesn't want his son to grow up chasing approval the way he did. Coming from a man who built an empire on approval and rejection, that's a complicated thing to admit. Some fans saw this as self-awareness. Others saw it as irony. TikTok comments flooded in like, "So you don't want him to be like you, but you built the world he's growing up in." And honestly, that's a fair question. But here is the part that truly broke the internet. The fifth and final layer. The one Simon himself said he almost didn't share. He admitted that there was a time he believed Eric would be better off without him around as much. Not physically gone, but emotionally distant. He thought keeping a bit of space would protect his son from the pressure of his fame, his criticism, his intensity. And only recently did he realize that distance didn't protect Eric. It confused him. When that clip surfaced, the reaction was immediate and intense. Parents sharing stories in the comments about making similar choices. Adult children talking about growing up with emotionally distant parents and how it shaped them. One comment that stood out to me said, "He thought absence was kindness. It wasn't. It was silence." And then Simon said something that I think will stay with a lot of people for a long time. He said, "You don't get a second draft with your kids." That was it. No dramatic music. No perfect closing line. Just the truth, sitting there, uncomfortable and heavy. So what do we do with this story? Is it a redemption arc? Is it too little, too late? Or is it a rare moment where someone at the top admits they don't have it figured out after all? I know what you're thinking. Why should we care? He's rich. His son will be fine. And maybe that's true in ways we can measure. But emotionally, that's not guaranteed for anyone. This confession wasn't shocking because it exposed a secret. It was shocking because it exposed something painfully common. The idea that providing is the same as being present. The idea that love can wait until later. And the quiet realization that later doesn't always show up when you think it will. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Simon's honesty changes how you see him? Do you believe owning your mistakes publicly actually helps heal them privately? Or does it just make us feel better for a moment before going back to the same habits? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Read each other's stories. Argue if you need to. But don't scroll past this one without thinking about it. Because behind the fame, behind the headlines, behind the shock, this wasn't really Simon Cowell's story at all. It was a reminder, and whether we like it or not, it's one that applies to more of us than we'd ever admit.